Hi everyone, I've got this beautiful 1930s original Winsor & Newton watercolor palette, um, pre-filled with original um, vintage pigments. So in today's video I'm going to paint a little landscape using these pigments. So let's get started. But first I'm going to wet my page with some clean water and I'm going to put in the sky. So this palette has a nice cool blue, which is the Prussian blue. Now considering that these colors are over 80 years old, their vibrancy is absolutely spectacular. The main thing with the skies is that you sort of have to touch them once. So once you put the paint down, leave it be, otherwise it ruins the effect. You can wait for the sky to dry fully, then layer additional colors over it. Now I'm going to use some of this chrome yellow to mix cool green. I'm going to use that with the Prussian blue. We'll put in some of those trees in the distance. Still painting wet and wet because these are trees somewhere out there in the distance and I don't need them to show too much detail. I'm going to add a little bit of variety into this by dropping in some of this gamboge tint, which is again, this pigment is not produced anymore. It's replaced by a synthetic pigment called the new gamboge. And a little bit more Prussian blue so that I can create a darker shade of green and just dropping that in along the horizon. Now I'm going to get this gamboge tint, which is a nice warm yellow. And I'm going to start putting in the lovely yellow fields. As we get closer, we're going to warm the color up, so as we get closer to the observer. And this is just some yellow ochre. Warming it up with the yellow ochre. Now I'm just going to add an indication of grass, and I'm going to, in the distance especially, I'm going to let the yellows and the greens run into one another and have a little bit of fun mixed together. Now I think this area has dried enough so that I can put in a little bit more foliage into this region. And again, it's wet and wet because I don't want this foliage to be too detailed. And that's the first layer done. Now this doesn't look very much like anything really. It's just shapes. It's just the first layer, the base colors, and it's the lightest lights. And the picture is going to start coming together as soon as we start adding our midtones and then our darker tones. I'm going to make the distance trees a little bit darker, so I will use some yellow ochre. Now, as you can see, I'm actually mixing these colors one into another. I'm not wasting too much pigment. And the main reason for it is it brings cohesion to the painting, so the hues tend to be consistent when each one of them contains its predecessor. So I'm mixing green into the yellow ochre. I'm mixing the yellow ochre into the blues. And now let's work a little bit on the green grass. So I want to mix a slightly darker green, so I'm using this pigment called green bice, which again, I think it's a mineral pigment, it's not manufactured anymore. And I'm mixing it with a little bit of Prussian blue just to darken it. And then I'm going to use indications of this green grass to establish my perspective lines. And now with a little bit of yellow ochre, I'm going to dry brush leaves that are going to be coming in our middle ground. So I'm going to use this light red, which is it looks almost burnt sienna-like. But I'm going to use this light red to just put in a little bit of texture into the middle ground here and connect it up with my shape there. Maybe somewhere in the distance. And some texture in close to the foreground. So by using Prussian blue and this light red, I can create a relatively dark black. And that's what I'm just going to be using here to add some more variety, especially towards the ground level. The main thing in watercolor is to try and avoid flat washes as much as possible. Let the colors play together and mix together and embrace the randomness of the watercolor. That to me is what makes it such a lovely medium to play with. The spontaneity of it and letting the colors do their thing. Next thing is I'd like to put a little tree here, but I'm going to make sure that this is completely dry. So once again, I'm going to use my heat gun. And with a smaller brush, I'm going to put in sort of a tree going here and a branch coming out here. I want to make sure the brush is not too dry, too wet. And then I'm going to use initially, I think I'll use yellow ochre because I don't want the tree to be too dark. And then I can always make it darker by adding additional value into it. This is where I need to be bold and intentional, otherwise it will look a little bit too artificial. So this looks okay, I think. So let's add some burnt sienna into this and mix it with some Prussian blue. And as you can see, I'm skipping, I'm not drawing these branches in their entirety. I'm making some skips and jumps because I want these branches to almost appear out of the foliage rather than grow around the foliage. And when I paint these little brushes or little branches, I like to hold my brush on the very end rather than closer to the bristles. So this gives me more control. This gives me a lot more fluidity. Now these branches are going to be random. So the more fluid I can get with my brush strokes, the more natural the branch. I don't particularly like how this foliage has the same value as these distant trees. So I would like to bring these elements forward, closer to us. And the final thing, which I think is going to bring this whole painting together, is a little bit of glazing. Which of these vintage colors are going to be transparent for the final glaze? So it's going to be a bit of an experimentation. So I'm going to try this to mix a gray using a crimson lake and ultramarine. And let's see where that gets us. So I think that should do it. Um, I'm going to try and get as much of this pigment into my brush as I possibly can so that I can glaze in one smooth motion. Right. And I think we'll call it a day with this. So here we are, a small little painting of a rural landscape, but done entirely using 80-year-old pigments. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.